This is the Georgia Farm Monitor. Since 1966, your source for state and national agribusiness news, and features for farmers and consumers about Georgia's #1 industry, agriculture. The Georgia Farm Monitor is produced by the state's largest general farm organization, the Georgia Farm Bureau. Now, here are your hosts, Ray DeLessio and Kenny Burgamy.
Yes, over a half century later, we are still here, and glad you are too. Welcome, everybody. Happy to have you along for the next 30 minutes. I am Ray DeLessio.
And I'm Kenny Burgamy. Sit tight, because we got a lot of good stuff for you today, including this, a Farm Monitor first. Join us as we turn up the heat and see the intense training the men and women of the Georgia Forestry Commission endure to keep us safe from those potentially deadly wildfires. Also on the program, for 25 years, they've been making memories. Why the folks at Washington Farm say different generations of customers are vital to the agricultural industry.
And then later, that Bradford pear you just bought, well, forget about it. Take it back. The reasons why Extension Specialist Paul Pugliese advises against them. These stories and so much more starting right now on the Farm Monitor. Needless to say, it's been quite the adventure for cotton farmers this planting season, as it went from one extreme to the other in just a matter of days. Too little rain or too much rain. John Holcomb gives us an update on how producers are handling the weather and what kind of crop they're expecting this year.
What started out as a decent planting season here in Georgia took a turn for the worse in a matter of just a few days. The state was significantly dry, which can be great when you're trying to get the crop in the ground. But all of a sudden, the rain came and came and came.
The 2018 cotton planting season has been kind of a roller coaster for us. We started off initially, we were really dry for the most part across the state. And then we came into some wet weather, and we stayed wet.
I visited one farm down in Hawkinsville to see how their cotton planting season was going.
We got about 2,000 acres of cotton this year and about 1,000 acres of peanuts, and some of our cotton's double crop with wheat. Our cotton crop was really looking good. We started planting around April 30th. We started planting, and as Mark Friedman said earlier, we were really dry to start with, the end of April and first 2 weeks of May. We had hardly any rain, and we were able to get a lot planted. We were actually ahead of schedule around the 15th of May, and then the rain started around the 15th.
Within just a few days, rain totals were almost unheard of for this time of year.
We had some totals up to almost 20 inches of rain since mid-May up until now.
As you can imagine, that presented some challenges to farmers, and perhaps the biggest challenge that farmers were facing was being able to get the rest of their crop in the ground.
We've got fields that we haven't even been able to get back into since the middle of May, and we're still trying to get back into them.
Traditionally, Georgia's between 15 and 20% planted in June, so it's definitely a large percentage of the state's cotton crop is going to be a late planted crop.
When they do get that crop in the ground, though, the worry isn't over. That crop is going to be behind schedule. However, after speaking with UGA Extension, there are some things that can be done to hopefully get it back to normal.
First thing we want to do on a June planted crop is probably decrease our nitrogen rates by about 25 to 30%. What that does, it keeps the plant from staying in a vegetative mode for too long. It keeps the plants a little bit earlier in maturity. And that's really what we want. We want the maturity to be earlier, so we can get the crop in and harvest the crop.
That maturity level is important due to the window of harvest being a small one.
The bloom window on a late planted crop is going to be compressed compared to a full season. We only get a few weeks of bloom where we're going to be able to harvest those bolls.
There's also some concern with the crop that was planted before the rain. When there's a lot of rainfall in such a short time, it can cause growing problems.
We use cover crops and conservation tillage, which is mainly there to hold the moisture, but on a year like this, as you can see, we've got a really heavy rye crop in our cotton, and it's holding that moisture, and so the cotton is being stunted because we've had so much rain and it's not able to dry out as fast.
Reporting in Hawkinsville for the Farm Monitor, I'm John Holcomb.
With summer now officially here, it's time to start serving up dishes with some of the freshest summer fruits the state has to offer. And it doesn't get any fresher than straight out of the field, which is why U-Pick operation like Washington Farms is worth the visit, as they provide not just blueberries and strawberries, but also another unique fruit. Damon Jones has the story.
It's now that time of year where parents are looking for fun outdoor activities for the entire family. That's why business at U-Pick operations all over the state are picking up, as they provide not just entertainment, but also the freshest berries you can buy. That's certainly the case for Washington Farms in Watkinsville, who is celebrating a milestone this year.
Well, we're a family-run business. We've been in business 25 years. This is our 25th year anniversary. And we grow pick-your-own strawberries, blueberries, and blackberries in the springtime and early summer. And about 90% of our business is pick-your-own. And so our motto is making memories at Washington Farms. And we've got families that come out and they bring their kids out and they pick every year.
These different generations of customers are very important for the agricultural industry as a whole, as it gives children a taste of life on the farm.
It's just a lot of fun meeting the folks and letting them come out and experience being on a farm. There's so many kids. We do a ton of field trip kids. Many of those have never been on a farm. There's a lot of people, whether it's field trip kids or not, that have never picked anything themselves right off a vine. They are ripe, they're ready to go, and the flavor is just incredible. So it's just an experience, giving folks an experience to come out and have fun at a farm.
And one crop you can find here at Washington Farms that you can't at most other U-Pick operations is blackberries. This fruit, which is usually ready to pick by mid-June, has a distinct flavor that lends itself well to a number of different dishes. But if you want that sweet taste, you have to have a little patience when picking them.
A lot of times the blackberries have a more tart flavor. You really have to wait. All those little bumps are called duplets, and those need to be completely filled out to really have a sweet blackberry. If it's got any red on it at all, it's going to be real tart. Most people don't eat them fresh. They make jam, they make pies and cobblers and different things with them. But the whole key to getting a good sweet blackberry is to wait for it to be fully ripe.
As for growing this crop, it's not much different than other berries, except the meticulous trimming throughout the year.
But we use a thornless variety, and the biggest problem is pruning them. That's the most, the thing we have to deal with the most is just labor intensive in pruning them.
However, that hard work is certainly worth it, as the demand for these blackberries never seem to drop off.
When we say we got blackberries today, we pretty much get overrun. We're trying to figure out where we can plant more right now.
Reporting from Watkinsville, I'm Damon Jones for the Farm Monitor.
All right, Damon, thank you so much. Well, they don't run from danger. They run towards it. When we come back, the Monitor with a first-hand look at how the men and women of the Georgia Forestry Commission train to battle a deadly force of nature.
Hi, I am Ava Jane Teasley from the Eastside FFA chapter in Covington, Georgia, and I'm currently serving as one of your North Region State Vice Presidents. My dad was actually an agricultural teacher before I was born in Hepzibah, and then he moved to Covington to work at the Georgia FFA FCCLA Center. So I've grown around Joint Camp, SLC, Summer Leadership Camp, seeing a bunch of FFA members come in and come out with their chapters and advisors. So I've always thought that FFA was just camp and awesome. And once I got into high school, I was so excited because I finally got to join FFA and get a little touch of what my dad just loved so much. And I fell in love. I started competing in creed speaking and different leadership CDs and getting involved, and it was just something that I just wanted to keep going with.
To learn more about the National FFA organization, log on to ffa.org.
I'm in 11th grade. I've been in 4-H ever since age 9, and I started by showing pigs. I started with livestock, and then that grew into singing, which was around 5th grade, I think. I started by singing in church, and then I had someone that really pushed me to pursue music. So it grew from church to singing into 4-H programs, and then singing there, and that kind of just moved on to different things like the radio station. And now it's just kind of like I sing every day of my life. Being a part of 4-H, they really, like, one thing that they really push you to do is really to serve your community. And part of doing that is I've hosted these plays where I take in kids and I teach them really just like different aspects of music, but then also through the club meetings and through all of our get-togethers, I'm able to teach them different plays. So we've done Stone Soup, and there's this one called The Best Little Theater in Town, so I've taught them that. And then at the end of all of our club meetings, we put on our production for our community. As of right now, I want to be a music therapist and also a voice coach, so I would hopefully go to college for that, and then after graduating, I would be able to become a music therapist, maybe in Macon, and then just do singing lessons on the side.
Chances are you will never see them, nor do you really want to for that matter. But rest assured, the men and women of the Georgia Forestry Commission's Wildland Firefighting Unit are out there protecting both you and I, as well as the environment. Their training, intense, as the Monitor found out recently when we were invited to spend a few weeks with them both in the classroom and in the field.
10-foot spacing, gentlemen, 10-foot spacing.
Go! Get them out, let's go! We want to establish a good foundation for the Rangers to build their career off of. So we introduce them to the very minute parts of the task, and our ultimate goal is to keep them safe. We want to keep these Rangers safe, so when they're out on the fire line, they can rely on their training. When the fire hits the brakes and it gets real intense, you always fall back to your basic training.
You don't look at most of this, just listen, you see what it's doing when it's hitting the fire out here.
I hope to be able to get something out of it that I can use further on down in my career and help others, make me and everyone else a better ranger, and be safe on the fires and hopefully put them out quicker. My fiance tells me I'm an adrenaline junkie, and I love the adrenaline that you get fighting a fire. There's nothing quite like it. You get out there on the dozer and you see there's flames over here, smoke everywhere. It's a lot of fun.
You've got to put your heart and soul into this and have your head right. Public safety as a whole, you got to love what you do. With this training here, it's what each individual wants to put into it also. I've always said that. I said it when I came through. It's what I'm going to put into it. And to be able to progress and get to this point where I'm at now, it is our hope of all of us instructors that one day some of these folks that we're training now will have these red shirts on and step up and carry on, be able to deliver the training and the experience so we can keep this Georgia Forestry Commission alive and well and moving forward in the right direction.
So behind us here we have the Thrush 510G. It's a brand new aircraft we just purchased from Thrush Aircraft out of Albany, Georgia. It's a 800 shaft horsepower turboprop single engine aircraft that we use for fighting fires. It has a 500 gallon capacity where we can carry water, retardants or suppressants to apply to the fire. We try to equip it with as much high-end stuff as we could. We have GPS agricultural navigation systems in there that will allow us to tag on to former drops with other aircraft. The aircraft can communicate with each other to help keep our attack synchronized when we're fighting fire. We also have an automatic gate system that allows us to manage the way we drop the water on the fires in differing ways. We can do that with splitting the loads into 100 gallon drops up to 500 gallon drops, different coverage levels, different quantities per run. There's a lot of variables we can put in there.
The larger fires is usually the only ones that make to the media and the news events, but there is an enormous amount of small fires that happens in each of these counties. We also assist local RFD stations. When they have wildfires that exceeds their capabilities, they will call on us, we'll come in and back them up. So there is a lot more of occurrence of escaped wildfires than people realize that occur throughout the state.
They said, you know, some people aren't cut out for it, and it does take a special kind of person, somebody that does like danger and adventure and excitement to do this job. There's not a lot of people that are gonna look at it and say, you know, that's what I want to do. I want to get told, drive this 18,000-pound bulldozer into a fire. And I think there's only like 300 of us rangers in the state. There's not very many of us.
We put these folks on the line and let them see what it's all about. That's why we call it live fire training. They're going to see some stuff that will open their eyes, but their training should be coming back to them. That's what it's all about. When you get put in a tough situation, your training will bring you back and help you get out of it.
Some brave individuals, aren't they? And don't forget, if you missed any part of the story or others on today's program, you can still see them in their entirety at our YouTube channel, the Georgia Fire Monitor. Plenty of stuff to choose from. In fact, the archive goes all the way back to 2009.
And while you're there, keep clicking and like the Georgia Fire Monitor Facebook page. Send us some feedback as well if you have a story idea or if you just want to leave us a comment or suggestion. Send us a message either on Facebook or at the address that is on your screen. That is news@farm-monitor.com. Well, if planting that Bradford pear is on your to-do list, you may want to hold off. Extension Specialist Paul Pugliese tells us why when the Farm Monitor continues.
When I started in Extension, I was in Marion and Sly counties. It's not a sink or swim type job start. They do, University Extension Service will assign you an official mentor. This job allows you to stay outside and you get to enjoy the outdoors. And as I said, when you build relationships with these farmers, you become more friends with them, and they're going to invite you to their pond fishing or their land to shoot doves or what have you. It's enjoyable. I get to be out in my county, stay outside. I visit with farmers, consult with them on their various issues with crops. It's very diversified. You never know what you're going to be doing when you go into work. You could be looking at a pond weed control question in the morning, the afternoon you're looking at a disease in a cornfield. You know, it's different every day and it keeps you on your toes.
Finally this week, what's next for you on that landscaping to-do list? Maybe shrubs, a couple of flower beds here and there, or maybe some trees.
Well, if it's the latter of the three, the Monitor's Paul Pugliese has some information on one tree you may want to scratch off your list permanently.
Hi, I'm Paul Pugliese with the University of Georgia Cooperative Extension. Today I want to talk to you about a very popular landscape tree known as the Bradford pear. This is a particular tree that we see planted all over the state for the flowers. It's actually a very popular landscape tree and produces beautiful white flowers in March and early spring every year. So this is one that has become very popular over the last 50, 60 years. The Bradford pear was actually introduced by USDA in the 1960s as a variety from China and Korea to actually try to breed in disease resistance into some of our cultivated or edible pear varieties. Unfortunately, that never really produced a whole lot, but they did find some really interesting flowering types of Bradford pears to make into an ornamental for landscape uses. So this is one that is very, very popular and one that we see planted all over the state of Georgia. Interestingly enough, I'm not actually a very big fan of Bradford pears. For one thing, the flowers actually kind of smell bad. If you've ever smelled the flowers, they almost smell like dead fish in the springtime. Another reason they're not a very popular plant as far as I'm concerned is that they tend to be very short-lived. They have very weak branch structures. If you notice, the branches on Bradford pears kind of go up vertically. They're very, very tall and gangly, and they tend to split out and break when they get older. So around 15, 20 years old, tends to be the limit as far as the age of these trees. Whenever a storm blows through town, you'll see these start to self-destruct and drop branches and become a problem in the landscape. So again, this tends to be a short-lived tree, not a big fan. The third reason that I'm not a big fan of Bradford pears is they actually have a tendency to revert back to a wild type that's invasive. So just like other invasive species like kudzu and Chinese privet and wisteria, this actually has an invasive cousin called wild calorie pear. The wild calorie pears actually produce these types of branches that look very similar, smaller leaves, but if you pull back the leaves, you'll notice that they actually have thorns that start to produce out, and these thorns can get 2 or 3 inches long. These thorns are actually sharp enough that they could actually puncture the tire of a tractor or a car if you're not careful. So as you can imagine, these are not very popular trees when they start growing wild in people's yards and over farms and fence rows and along roadsides. So how do they become invasive? Well, the Bradford pear, as you can see, does not have those thorns, but it actually does produce some fruit, and these particular fruit are very, very tiny. The fruit on this tree actually can hybridize with other wild pears, and so sometimes it'll produce viable seeds, and the fruit are actually eaten by birds and carried and planted everywhere that those seeds drop. And so that's how these wild calorie types begin to start. So we're going to talk a few minutes about how to control these. One of the other ways that Bradford pears can go wild is through stump sprouts. If you take a look at this tree, it's actually a type that's grafted. Some of the old Bradford pear varieties were grafted onto a wild type of rootstock with the calorie pear species. So whenever they produce root suckers, whenever the tree falls over, dies, or if it gets hit with a weed eater one too many times, it'll produce these sucker sprouts. And these suckers will also produce thorns, and sometimes they'll bear fruit that'll spread. And so one of the things you want to do is avoid hitting that tree or wounding that tree to create these types of suckers and be a problem. One of the ways to get rid of Bradford pears that become invasive is to make sure you treat the stumps. Anytime a tree dies or you have to cut it down for some reason, you want to make sure you treat those stumps so that they don't come back from the root sprouts. This can also be used for any of the wild types of calorie pears that tend to regrow from those stumps when you cut them down. So the way to do that is to treat it with a stump treatment of herbicide. And there are actually a couple of different herbicides you can use. The two most popular ones are glyphosate and triclopyr. And make sure you pick up a highly concentrated type that has maybe a 40% concentrate of glyphosate to use this type of a stump treatment. Whenever you're doing a stump treatment, it's really important to note that you don't actually dilute this out. This is one of the few exceptions that you use at full strength. And so when you measure this out, you actually want to use a disposable paintbrush. Make sure you wear gloves to protect your hands from any chemicals that you might be exposed to. I prefer a disposable brush so that when I'm done with it, I throw it away and it doesn't get used for anything else. When you're doing a stump treatment, you can dip your brush into that herbicide and you paint it right onto the stump, full strength, and you want to go all the way around the edges. What's interesting is you don't have to treat the whole stump. You only have to treat the outer inch or two around the perimeter of the stump, and that'll actually do very well as far as controlling the tree. So you can save a little bit of herbicide by not treating the entire stump. And if you do this properly, this will prevent those root sprouts from coming back. If you do have a very aggressive root system, sometimes you need to come back and spot spray those sprouts that come up later. One very important thing to remember is to treat the stump while it's still green. As soon as you cut it down, the quicker you can treat that stump, the better. For more information, contact your local county extension office or go to our website at ugaextension.org, and be sure to follow us for more gardening tips on the Georgia Farm Monitor.
Thank you, Paul. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Farm Monitor.
Here's a reminder for all the latest ag info regarding food, great recipes, and what's happening down on the farm. Be sure and check out our Twitter, Facebook, and Pinterest pages. You'll stay informed, see what's up in the world of farming, plus with us here on the show.
Take care, everybody. We will see you next week right here on the Farm Monitor.
As always, have a great week.